With the Star Force Legacy Collection on the horizon, we're pretty close to being able to play all the Mega Man games on modern consoles. Well, mainline Mega Man games anyway, because with all the compilations we've gotten, no spin-offs have ever made it in. And I do kind of understand, let's focus resources on the important stuff first, and then, cross our fingers, go back for the goofy ones if there's still demand for it. Even with that though, it still feels like there were a few things that were excluded that really shouldn't have been. And that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm Wes, the Explosion, and these are the games that, in my opinion, really should have been on the Legacy collections. Of course, we gotta start with the big one that not only set the precedent, but also is the most glaring omission here, Mega Man and Bass. It does not have a number, but was meant as an alternative for those who didn't have 8 because they were still living in a Nintendo household, and many even refer to it as Mega Man 8.5. It's a platformer where you play as Mega Man, a few of the bosses from Mainline 8 did appear, as well as many of the sprites being adjusted and reused to work on the Super Famicom, the Japanese Super Nintendo, and they even referenced the game at the end of Mega Man 9, along with the previous numbered titles. All of this points to it being a core Mega Man experience, and yet, it didn't make it into the Legacy Collection. So why? Is it because it played too differently from the mainline stuff? Because the boss rush is formatted similarly to 1, while not so much collectibles, 7 also had a big focus on hunting down extra stuff, the store upgrades and power-ups were similar to 8, and you can play as characters other than Mega Man in 9 and 10. Was it considered extra? Because we did get the DLC for 9 and 10? Was it because the main villain was someone other than Wily? Because, just promise me you'll beat it someday. While it is odd, all of its differences can be found in other classic titles, this one is just kind of an amalgamation of them. It could just be a simple matter of it not having a number, so format doesn't matter, it gets equal treatment with Battle and Chase and Mega Man Soccer. Or maybe they just didn't know how to handle it, given that we never got a proper release of the game. The original Rockman and Forte was made for the Super Famicom, which you'd hook up to the television. We didn't get it internationally until they ported it to the Game Boy Advance, which has a much smaller screen. Yeah, TVs vary in size, but I don't think I've ever seen one as tiny as a handheld. Because of this, Mega Man and Bass had major screen crunch, your vision not extending as far as originally intended, and what the game was actually designed for. There's traps, obstacles, and enemies that you can't see when you're supposed to, but they can sure still affect you, just as Burner Man, making our version significantly worse. The game is infamously hard, and that's due at least in part to this. So if they were to include Mega Man and Bass, how would they do it? Reserve the good version for Japan and give everyone else the substandard one? Throw in both and make international audiences have to choose between being able to read and able to see? Do some actual work and import the Mega Man and Bass text and logo into Rockman and Forte. While I don't think any of these options seem impossible, though that first one probably would have gotten some death glares, that there wasn't one obvious answer might have something to do with it. Or maybe it simply was because it didn't have a number. And if it don't have a number, it don't count. Ha! Count! Get it? Regardless, its exclusion was a pretty bleak hint at what was to come, since if not even Mega Man and Bass could make it onto a Legacy collection, what chance did any other lonely, numberless title have? Also, one last smartass comment on this one. I'd say maybe they didn't include it because of how notoriously difficult it was, them not wanting to scare off new fans, but this would have been in the same bundle as the Wily capsule in Mega Man 9. Ho ho! Maverick Hunter X not being on the X Legacy collection makes sense. It's a remake with its own canon, so it doesn't really fit with the rest, unless you are just tossing us bonus games. There's just one thing that makes its absence a little weird, and that's the inclusion of Day of Sigma in the gallery. This is a prequel anime for Maverick Hunter X that you unlock after beating the game, and it's the biggest argument against Maverick Hunter X not being just a simple retelling, but as I mentioned, its own separate thing. There's a lot of details that just don't fit with X 1 through 8, so why include it here? I mean, it's neat, don't get me wrong, and I'm glad to be able to access it without needing to start up my PSP, but it's gotta be confusing for some more casual fans. Wait, wasn't that the guy that shows up in X2? I thought Zero gave Sigma his scars. Was there a separate anime adaptation of X that my local TV station didn't broadcast? No, and at the time this came out, it probably would have been Toonami, not Antenna. So I guess I can give the X collections a pass. This add-on is just a little weird and muddies the water a bit. Then we finally got our first perfect collection, not only containing a full series in one place, but also its follow-up. The main reason for that is that Mega Man Zero is a smaller series without any spin-offs, so it had no extras that it really needed, and it'd be hard to justify splitting it up. I mean, none of the previous games were too huge. They probably could have just charged a bit more for one complete package for Classic or X, but that's another discussion. Anyway, the Zero Legacy Collection had all 4 games, and even included the 2 ZX titles. Because not only would just ZX and ZX Advent be the smallest collection thus far, but I kind of also want to say that it's the least popular Mega Man series, so it wouldn't be all that desirable. Let's just tack it on to the end of Zero so that we can say that we re-released them without needing to put together a separate package and marketing campaign for it. Though the Zero games are also super intimidating, infamous for their difficulty, so they too might be a hard sell. Perhaps these were together because Capcom figured both could use the help? Either way, this might be the one argument you could make for them packing in side games if a set did need something extra. While ZX isn't a spin-off, they're not Zero games either, even if they do have a lot in common. And hey, the second ZX game isn't even ZX2, so that also breaks the needs a number thing. So I take it back. The Zero ZX Legacy Collection isn't perfect, it manages to be more. The Battle Network Legacy Collections did a lot for its series, adding in Japanese exclusive content, including a dungeon that, the lack of, made the final game near impossible to 100%, on top of both versions of the games that did the whole Pokemon thing. Well, I say that, but there was one that wasn't included, Mega Man Battle Network 5 Double Team. That one even has a proper number, it's not a spin-off. No, it's an expanded port of the Game Boy Advance titles, including both Team Proto Man and Team Colonel, with massive quality of life improvements, more customization and ways to play as the other Nabbies outside of Liberation missions, menus and maps integrated into the touchscreen, and a redone soundtrack, to name a few things. It is, hands down, the best way to play Battle Network 5. At least if it's available, and with it being the way that I originally experienced the games, it was really hard to go back to the GBA editions in the collection. And, I mean, there's not too many reasons not to include this. They had the DLC for Classic 9 and 10, so it's not like the Legacy collections are bound to just the base games. Double Team came out between 5 and 6, so this wasn't some massive remake years and years later, it fit right into the original release cycle. Previously ported games retained their voice acting, and they even got megaman.exe back for the collection's menu, though if there were some reason they absolutely couldn't get the rights to redistribute old vocal lines, how hard could they have been to cut out? And while you could point to the extra screen complicating things, they already pulled it off with the ZX games, and I think a similar format could have worked here. Heck, if you wanted more, this could have even been a testing ground for where they take things with the Star Force collection. I can probably recycle my guess from Mega Man and Base and say that maybe they didn't know how to handle this one. To say it again, Double Team is the way to play Battle Network 5. It is such a massive improvement over the base game, so if they did use it, there really wouldn't be any reason to play the original versions. So, do they just not bother with the GBA ones? While I think most would be fine with this, I can see a few people wanting the original experience for authenticity. Do they include ports of all 3? That'd be another boost to the game count, though it'd also be a waste of memory space for the vast majority of people. Maybe even an annoyance for some if they felt obligated to play through everything on the collection, either for achievements or OCD. Or do they just keep things consistent and only put the GBA editions in? Well, regardless of the rationale, they did the last one, for better or worse. No, just worse. This collection is objectively worse for not having the best version of the game included. Again, it's not a remake like Maverick Hunter X, it's an expanded port. You could practically call it the third version of the game. While I think Mega Man and Base is the most obvious exclusion, This is probably the one that I'm the most upset about. This is my second favorite battle network, and me experiencing it this way probably plays a pretty big part in why I love it so much. In fact, here's another possibility. Capcom did this just to spite me. They knew that I was late to the party, didn't get the original GBA carts for 5, and I got about half of the rest of the series used, held the missed sales against me, and this was their revenge. I really need to download a DS emulator. Continue to do everything in an upright and legal way. Now, we already know that the Star Force collection won't be perfect. That's right, it looks like they're taking out the ability to draw your own avatar for your brother band profile, because Capcom knows that some of you are weirdos who will draw penises in the children's game and then go online. That said, it is gonna have every version of all 3 games and all in one place. Plus, we're getting patch cards like with Battle Network, and if they continue to follow BN's lead, there's also some Japanese exclusive dungeons that could be added back in. For spin-off territory, there is Operate Shooting Star, but I'd argue that belongs more to Battle Network, so while we are losing some customization, if we get everything that we were missing out on before, I'd say that it's close enough to perfect that I'd be willing to round up. I did not make this video just to push back against all the people who gave me sass when I said that the Mega Man's Legend Legacy Collection won't include the Misadventures of Trombone. Though while we're on the subject, yeah, until I'm proven wrong, I'll stand by my prediction. While not impossible, if I thought Capcom was likely to make exceptions, this list would have been a lot longer. But no, the Game Boy adaptations are a side thing, I already touched on why remakes don't count, and there's so many oddball genre-jumping entries that nobody played out there that it'd be weird to include them in something labeled as a legacy collection. And don't even get me started on all the Japanese-only stuff. Though Battle Network hints that some of that might be possible if it's considered important enough. As for Legends, while I will say that those games are big enough to warrant a re-release, just the 2 of them, there are 2 other titles that Capcom could include if they wanted a juicier package that doesn't break any of the rules. But we'll talk about that some other time. That'll do it for now though, so let me ask you, do you disagree with any of my complaints, and are there any titles that you think should have been included that I passed over? And if you hit me with that second one, really sell me on it. If we go with a, because I really want them to, there'll be no end to it. Also, since I went over what I think should have made it in, should I at some point comment on why others didn't? With that, thanks as always for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you're into retro games, especially Mega Man. Also, none of this means that I'm going back on any of my points in the Is Mega Man in Base Mainline video.